The Forgotten Species. The crystal towers of Nexus Prime gleamed under three suns as delegates from across the galaxy gathered for another session of the Galactic Federation Council. The massive chamber buzzed with hundreds of different languages, translated instantly by neural implants that made communication possible between species that had evolved on worlds light years apart. At the center of it all stood the speaker's podium, where today's agenda would unfold like any other routine meeting of the most powerful civilizations in known space. Commander Zefix of the Altarian Empire adjusted his ceremonial armor as he approached the podium. His four arms moved gracefully, each gesture calculated to show both strength and diplomatic courtesy. The Altarians had ruled the Eastern Spiral for over 3,000 years, and their word carried weight in every corner of the galaxy. Today, he would address a matter that had been bothering the Federation for some time, a small annoyance that needed to be cleared from their records once and for all. Honored delegates, Zefix began, his voice amplified across the chamber. We gather today to discuss the final disposition of what was once called the Human Colonial Initiative. A wave of amused chittering and clicking sounds rippled through the assembly. Even the mention of humans seemed to bring levity to the otherwise serious proceedings. In the viewing galleries above, Ambassador Therak of the Sultan Confederacy leaned forward with interest. The Sultan were known for their meticulous record-keeping and their fascination with extinct civilizations. "Remind us, Commander," Therak called out, his translator converting his melodious whale song into standard Galactic. "How long has it been since we last heard from these humans?" Zefix consulted his data tablet, though he already knew the answer by heart. 47 standard years, Ambassador. Their last official communication was a distress signal from their colony on Kepler 442 bits, requesting medical supplies for what they called a plague outbreak. When our relief ships arrived 6 months later, they found empty settlements and no signs of struggle. Simply abandoned. The chamber filled with the various sounds that different species made to express amusement. The insectoid Kythera buzzed their wing cases in what passed for laughter among their kind. The gaseous nebulans pulsed with colors that shifted from blue to purple, their equivalent of a chuckle. Even the stoic crystalline collective allowed their normally steady light patterns to flicker with what might have been mirth. "Typical human behavior," commented Senior Analyst Vex of the Techno Union, her cybernetic implants glowing as she accessed historical data. "They always bit off more than they could chew. Remember their grand announcement 50 years ago about establishing 100 colonies across 3 sectors? We told them they lacked the resources, the technology, and frankly, the wisdom to succeed at such a scale. They were so stubborn about it too," added General Korath of the Draconian Houses, his scaled face stretching into what might have been a smile if not for the rows of sharp teeth. "Refused our offers of assistance, claimed they wanted to do it alone, and proved their worth to the galaxy. Pride, as they say, goes before the fall." The historical records painted a clear picture of humanity's brief and unsuccessful attempt at galactic colonization. Earth's governments had pooled their resources in an ambitious project to establish human settlements throughout local space. For a decade, transport ships had carried millions of volunteers to worlds that orbital surveys had deemed suitable for human habitation. The colonists had been brave, determined, and woefully unprepared for the realities of interstellar survival. "The pattern was always the same," Zefix continued, warming to his subject. "They would establish a colony, struggle for a few years with basic survival issues, then either request evacuation or simply stop communicating altogether. Of the 93 worlds they attempted to colonize, 67 were abandoned within the first 5 years. What about Earth itself?" asked Counselor Mexlan of the Aquatic Alliance, her question bubbling up from the water-filled section of the chamber reserved for her species. Surely their homeworld still maintained some level of civilization. This question brought a more subdued response from the assembly. Even among species that considered humans to be failures at galactic civilization, Earth's sudden silence had been puzzling. For 3 decades, the blue-green world had been a constant source of radio chatter, television broadcasts, and digital communications that had painted a picture of a vibrant but chaotic civilization. Scientists had studied human entertainment and news broadcasts with the same interest they might show for the behavior patterns of any other developing species. Earth went silent 22 years ago, Zefix replied, his tone becoming more serious. All communications ceased simultaneously across all frequencies. Deep space monitoring stations detected no signs of nuclear war, environmental collapse, or asteroid impact. The planet simply stopped talking to the stars. Mass extinction event, suggested Dr. Helix of the Medical Consortium, her tentacles weaving complex patterns that indicated professional curiosity. Many species go through evolutionary bottlenecks. Perhaps humans simply didn't survive their technological adolescence. Possible. Zefix agreed, though something in his voice suggested doubt. However, recent surveys of the Sol system show signs of ongoing industrial activity. Heat signatures from Earth's surface, organized shipping lanes between planets, even construction activity on their moon. Someone or something is still there, but they're not talking. The chamber fell into a thoughtful quiet. In a galaxy where even the most primitive species eventually reached out to their neighbors, such deliberate silence was unusual. The Federation had protocols for dealing with civilizations that chose isolation, but those were typically ancient species that had already achieved interstellar status and simply wanted to be left alone. Perhaps they're embarrassed, suggested Ambassador Krill of the Merchant Guilds, his mechanical voice carrying a note of practical cynicism. Their colonial expansion was such a spectacular failure that they'd chosen to retreat rather than face the ridicule of more successful species. This explanation seemed to satisfy most of the assembly. It fit with what they knew of human psychology from their decades of observation. Humans were emotional creatures, prone to pride and shame in equal measure. The idea that they might choose self-imposed exile rather than admit failure was entirely consistent with their known behavioral patterns. Very well, Zefix concluded. The matter is settled. The Human Colonial Initiative is to be officially classified as a failed experiment in interstellar expansion. Their abandoned colonies will be marked as available for reclamation by qualified species, and Earth itself will be monitored but otherwise left undisturbed. Unless there are any objections. No voice rose in protest. The humans had made their choice, and the galaxy was content to let them live with the consequences. The assembly moved on to more pressing matters like trade disputes and territorial negotiations, filing away the human situation as another minor footnote in the vast history of galactic civilization. But in the months that followed, strange reports began to filter back to Federation intelligence services. Ships that ventured too close to abandoned human colonies reported equipment malfunctions and navigation errors that forced them to change course. Asteroid mining operations in systems that had once hosted human settlements found their automated equipment mysteriously sabotaged, with circuits burned out by power surges that had no identifiable source. Captain Thixes of the exploration vessel Starwind was the first to report something more substantial than equipment failure. Her ship had been conducting a routine survey of the former human colony on Wolf 359 when they detected what appeared to be a derelict space station in orbit around the planet's largest moon. Standard protocol required investigation of any unknown structures, so Thixes had dispatched a shuttle with a full science team. The station was definitely human in design. She reported to Federation Command 3 days later, her voice tight with concern. But it was far more advanced than anything in their technical database. The hull was made from materials that our scanners couldn't identify, and the power systems were completely beyond our understanding. "Did you attempt to board?" asked Admiral Vorthen, his holographic image flickering slightly due to the distance between ships. "We tried," Thixes replied. "But as soon as our shuttle approached the docking bay, every system on the station activated simultaneously. Lights, gravity, life support, even what appeared to be weapon systems. The station sent a single message on standard communication frequencies. What did it say? Thixis consulted her notes, though she had already memorized the brief transmission. Just 2 words: move along. Our shuttle pilot decided that discretion was the better part of valor and returned to the ship immediately. Similar reports began arriving from across human space with increasing frequency. Ships that had planned to survey abandoned colonies found themselves facing sudden mechanical failures that forced them to retreat. Science vessels reported being shadowed by unidentified craft that appeared on sensors only briefly before vanishing again. Most disturbing of all were the accounts of perfectly functional human settlements that observation teams glimpsed from a distance before sensor interference made detailed scans impossible. The Federation's xenobiological experts struggled to make sense of the pattern. If humans were still active in their former colonial territories, why maintain the pretense of abandonment? If they had developed significantly more advanced technology, why not announce their achievements to the galaxy? The behavior suggested a level of coordinated planning that seemed inconsistent with the chaotic, individualistic species that had been observed for so many decades. "There's something we're missing," Admiral Vorthen confided to his staff during a classified briefing, 6 months after the first mysterious encounters. The humans we studied were incapable of this level of systematic deception. They argued among themselves constantly, could barely coordinate activities within a single star system, and were notorious for their inability to keep secrets. "Perhaps they've evolved," suggested Intelligence Director Quill, her avian features sharp with concentration. 50 years of colonial struggle might have forced them to develop better organizational skills. Or perhaps, offered science advisor Nimex, his crystalline form pulsing with nervous energy, we never understood them as well as we thought we did. The truth, when it finally became clear, would shake the foundations of everything the galaxy thought it knew about the small, stubborn species from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. The awakening giant. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of Bastion Station, watching the stars through the transparent aluminum viewport that stretched from floor to ceiling. The massive space habitat rotated slowly around its central axis, creating artificial gravity that allowed its 10 million residents to live in comfort despite being located in the cold void between star systems. Around her, the soft hum of conversation in a dozen human languages mixed with the ambient sounds of a functioning city, children laughing as they played in nearby parks, the distant rumble of industrial fabrication units working around the clock to expand humanity's growing presence in space. "Admiral," called Commander Jackson Torres as he approached with a data tablet in hand, "the latest intelligence reports from our observation posts are ready for your review." Chen accepted the tablet without taking her eyes off the stars. For 25 years, she had served as the director of humanity's greatest secret, the Shadow Fleet initiative that had transformed their species from failed colonists into something far more dangerous and sophisticated than any alien species had imagined possible. The weight of that responsibility had carved lines into her face and turned her hair silver, but her eyes remained sharp with the intelligence that had earned her the position. "The Federation Council still believes we've retreated to Earth in shame?" she asked, scrolling through reports from deep-cover agents who had been monitoring alien communications for decades. "Most of them," Torres confirmed, although Admiral Vorthen and a few others are starting to ask uncomfortable questions. "Our deception operations have been working perfectly, but increased alien curiosity is making it harder to maintain the illusion." Chen nodded thoughtfully. The plan had been audacious from the beginning, requiring a level of coordination and discipline that alien observers had believed humans incapable of achieving. When their first wave of colonial expansion had indeed failed spectacularly, humanity's leaders had faced a choice. They could retreat to Earth and accept a minor role in galactic affairs, or they could use their failure as cover for something far more ambitious. "Project Looking Glass is still on schedule?" Chen asked, referring to the massive intelligence network that had been watching and learning from every major alien civilization for the past 2 decades. "Ahead of schedule, actually," Torres replied with satisfaction. We now have complete technical specifications for Altarian faster-than-light drives, stealth and biological computers, Cathera swarm robotics, and draconian energy weapons. Our research teams estimate we're now at least 50 years ahead of any single alien species in most critical technologies. The key to humanity's transformation had been patience and the willingness to appear weak while growing strong. While aliens assumed that abandoned human colonies were simply empty failures, they had actually become the foundation for a vast network of hidden research facilities and manufacturing centers. Humans had studied every alien species they encountered, not as potential friends or enemies, but as teachers whose knowledge could be absorbed and improved upon. The Unity Council has approved the final phase, Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. Unanimous vote. Torres confirmed. After 25 years of preparation, humanity is ready to take its place as a major galactic power. The demonstration fleet is standing by for your orders. Chen closed her eyes and felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. Everything that humanity had worked toward for the past quarter century would be decided in the next few hours. Either they would emerge as equals in the galactic community, or they would trigger a war that could destroy both their species and the Federation itself. Signal the fleet, she decided. Operation Daybreak begins now. Across 36 star systems, human vessels that had been hiding in asteroid fields and nebula began powering up their engines. The ships themselves were marvels of hybrid technology, combining the best innovations from every alien species with uniquely human improvements that no other civilization had imagined. Hulls that could phase shift through multiple dimensions, weapons that could disrupt matter at the quantum level, and defensive systems that could render entire fleets invisible to any known sensor technology. But the ships were only part of the demonstration. As they moved toward their destination, massive space habitats began decloaking throughout human space. Bastion Station was just one of 47 major installations that humanity had been constructing in secret, each one larger and more technologically advanced than anything the Federation had ever seen. Cities in space that housed millions of people, industrial complexes that could fabricate entire fleets, research centers that had been pushing the boundaries of science, while the galaxy assumed humans were extinct. The destination for Operation Daybreak was the Nexus Prime system, where the Federation Council was in session for their quarterly meeting. Chen had chosen the location carefully. If humanity was going to announce its return to galactic affairs, it should be done where every major species would witness it firsthand. Admiral Vorthen was reviewing supply requisitions in his office aboard the orbital defense platform Eternal Vigilance when his communication officer burst through the door without requesting permission to enter. The young Altarian's 4 arms were trembling with excitement or fear, and his usually precise diction was jumbled with urgency. "Admiral," the officer gasped, "you need to see this immediately. Our long-range sensors are detecting massive gravimetric disturbances throughout the system. Something is coming out of hyperspace, or multiple somethings." Vorthen followed his officer to the command center, where every screen and display was showing the same impossible sight. Ships were materializing from faster-than-light travel at coordinates that should have been empty space. Not just a few ships, but hundreds of them, appearing in perfect formation as if they had been rehearsing this maneuver for years. "Analysis," Vorthen demanded, his training overriding his shock. "Unknown configuration," reported his sensor officer, her voice tight with concentration. "The hulls are definitely artificial, but they're using materials and energy signatures that don't match anything in our database." "Wait." She paused, checking her readings twice before continuing. "Sir, some of these designs are showing elements consistent with human architecture, but that's impossible." "Why is it impossible?" Vorthen asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Because these ships are more advanced than anything currently in service with any Federation species. The power outputs alone suggest technology that shouldn't exist for another century." On the main viewer, the assembled fleet began moving toward Nexus Prime with the precision of a military formation that had been practicing together for decades. At the center of the formation, a ship larger than anything in Federation service broadcasted a message on all standard frequencies. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Shadow Fleet, requesting permission to address the Galactic Federation Council. We come in peace, but we come as equals, not supplicants. In the council chambers, delegates who had been debating trade regulations found themselves staring at displays showing impossible ships commanded by a species they had written off as evolutionary failures. The silence stretched for long moments before Commander Zephyx found his voice. This is Commander Zephyx of the Altarian Empire, serving as current council speaker. Admiral Chen, our records indicate that human civilization retreated to Earth decades ago after failed colonial expansion. How do you explain your presence here with clearly advanced military vessels? Chen's image appeared on the main communication screen, her face calm, but her eyes reflecting the intensity of someone who had spent decades preparing for this moment. Behind her, the bridge of her flagship bustled with activity as crew members from dozens of different human ethnic groups worked together with the efficiency of a well-trained military unit. Commander Zephyx, Chen replied, humanity never retreated. We simply chose to grow quietly while the galaxy was looking elsewhere. For 25 years, we have been watching, learning, and preparing. We have studied every species in the Federation, absorbed their knowledge, and combined it with innovations that are uniquely our own. Impossible, interrupted General Korath, his draconian pride stung by the implication that humans might have surpassed his people's military technology. Your species lacks the intellectual capacity for such achievements. Chen's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. General, your people's energy weapons are impressive, but they rely on focused plasma that dissipates over distance. Our version uses quantum entanglement to maintain coherence across interstellar distances. As she spoke, targeting lasers from her fleet painted every Federation vessel in the system, including the heavily armed defense platforms that were supposed to protect Nexus Prime. The self and biological computers process information using organic neural networks. Chen continued, turning to address Ambassador Therak directly. Our quantum biological hybrids achieve the same processing power using structures 1,000th the size. Data streams began appearing on Federation screens, showing technical specifications and performance analyses that demonstrated human understanding of alien technology that went far beyond anything previously suspected. The question before this council, Chen concluded, is simple. Humanity is returning to galactic affairs as a major power, whether you acknowledge it or not. You can choose to welcome us as equals and partners, or you can attempt to treat us as the primitive species you remember. But understand this. We are no longer the failed colonists who struggle to survive on frontier worlds. We are something new. The demonstration that followed changed the balance of galactic power forever. Human ships performed maneuvers that violated known physics, weapons that could disable entire fleets without causing permanent damage, and defensive systems that made their vessels effectively immune to any attack the Federation could mount. Most impressive of all was the coordination, the absolute unity of purpose that allowed millions of humans to work together toward common goals without the endless debates and conflicts that had once characterized their species. When the demonstration ended, the Federation faced a new reality. Humanity had not only survived their early failures, but had used them as stepping stones to achievements that surpassed any single alien civilization. The species that had been mocked for their weakness and dismissed as evolutionary failures had become the most technologically advanced power in known space. The age of human isolation is over, Admiral Chen announced as her fleet maintained their positions around Nexus Prime. We offer partnership to those who are willing to treat us with respect, and we demand acknowledgement from those who are not. The choice is yours. In the years that followed, historians would mark this as the moment when humanity truly joined the galactic community, not as junior partners seeking approval, but as equals demanding respect. The species that had once been laughed at for their failed colonies became the architects of a new age of interstellar cooperation, proving that sometimes the greatest strength comes from learning how to be silent until you're ready to roar.